And the news for January 24th, 2025. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD, also from apparently the Great White North. I don't even know. It's crazy
Jeff,
in New Orleans.
We're going to start with the Where You At segment because I read your post today and I've been watching the news over this past week and I'm like, where are you at, Jeff? Did you move to Alaska? Because that's how much snow is around your city. But no, you're still in New Orleans. Just insane. You had a link to the Times-Picayune, the local New Orleans newspaper. New Orleans got twice the snow of an Alaska city since December 1st. What is like 1895 or something? Well, the record for New Orleans. Just insane. Alaska is actually texting New Orleans saying we want our snow back. How has it been this week in snowbound New Orleans? A phrase I would never think I would say.
It was, I've lived in New Orleans my entire life, although I've spent time in other cities from time to time. And so, every 5 or 10 years, we might get cold weather. There'll be a few snowflakes. People like me.
A sprinkling, as it were.
Exactly. We will go outside. We will count the snowflakes. We will think that it's amazing and stuff like that. And that's it. My wife, who's from New York, will roll her eyes at us because she grew up with so much snow. So when they said it was going to snow in New Orleans this past Tuesday, I'm like, yeah, we'll head and have this. And then they're starting to say, like, it could be, a couple inches. And I'm like, wow, I've never seen that in my life. That would be really interesting if we got like more than an inch of snow. And then the night before, I was looking at the news, and the news said, we think it's going to be 3 to 6 inches. And they said, we actually have some models that have like 7 to 9 inches. And they sort of laughed at that. And the thing is, this is something I'm familiar with because since we live in a city where we always are worried about hurricanes. I don't know if you know this, but like when they have the weather forecast for hurricanes, they'll have all the computer models that will have, it's like spaghetti, it'll be like this has this track, this is this track. And, most of the tracks will go in one area, but there's going to always be like the European track, the European model that will be like 200 miles to the west or the east. And you just sort of say, okay, well, whatever. There's some of these tracks are crazy.
Outlier.
So when they said we might get over 6 or 7 inches of snow, I'm like, yeah, that's really funny. Brett, we got 10 inches of snow at my house. It was, I measured it. It was unbelievable. I've barely seen that much snow in my life anywhere in the world, let alone in New Orleans. I mean, this tropical city, we don't have snow in New Orleans. It was unbelievable. Walking around was, I walked around on St. Charles Avenue, which is one of the main thoroughfares in New Orleans, where the Mardi Gras parades go. A place that I've been many, many times in my life, and these beautiful, trees that have been there hundreds of years, live oak trees. And I could not believe how beautiful it was. It was magical. I know you live in Ohio. I know that you understand the beauty of new fallen snow. But to take that beauty and to juxtapose it on a city that has never seen it before, it's one of those things in life that is, at the same time you're looking at it, you're thinking, I can't believe what I'm seeing. I'm taking pictures and I go home and I'm looking at the pictures. I'm like, is this real? Is this Photoshop? It was unbelievable. You're showing some fantastic pictures right now from the Times-Picayune. Their photographers took some amazing pictures. It was just I'm still aghast. And even as I'm talking to you now, that was on Tuesday that we got.
Right.
I'm looking out my window. So I drove into the office today, which was a little dicey because there is still ice on the roads. I took some of the main thoroughfares, so it was okay where I drove. But there's nobody in my office today. They said it was open if you wanted to come in, but otherwise everybody worked from home. And I decided to come in just to check it out. So I'm in downtown New Orleans looking out my window, 46 floors up in the sky. I can see the Mississippi River Bridge. I can see the curve of the river. And everywhere that I look, I see snow on the top of buildings and houses. And it's 41 degrees right now, so it's obviously starting to melt, but it is it's surreal. It is surreal.
I'm looking at these pictures and some of these landmarks, Jackson Square and the French Quarter, and even the parks around. I've been there several times. Obviously I don't live, but we visited many times, and just like you said, I'm like, is that Photoshop? Like, I mean, you can put fake snow into a picture. It just does not seem real. Like, I can't even imagine it, and I wasn't even there. but it just so weird. I mean, and and in true New Orleans fashion, there's somebody walking down Bourbon Street playing a tuba in the
Why
snow.
not?
I mean, why not? This is great. Well, you sent me a couple of pictures here just from you walking around your neighborhood. I'm sorry I said, well, this is one of the poorest looking snowmen I've ever seen, except for the fact that it's in New Orleans. So that's the most amazing snowman that I've ever seen there. And some of these others, I mean, here's a house you sent that's all decked out for Mardi Gras. And it's all covered in snow.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just
I
hilarious.
can't fathom that.
It was just completely surreal, and the trees were so beautiful with the snow on them. You mentioned the snowman. One thing I noticed, and of course you're gonna laugh because you know what I'm talking about, is like, and for some reason, because it's a high definition image, it's not looking correct on your screen right now, but that's okay.
Okay.
Imagine this wonderful snowman. But when I tried to build a snowman with my kids, the snow wasn't really sticking together, and my wife said something about like it's too wet or too dry or something. I know nothing about snow, but so I couldn't really make a big one, but I made a tiny little small ones. But my kids did make snow angels, which were fun, and it was just it was just surreal. Snow in the trees, snow everywhere. It was beautiful. So I'm glad to have lived through it. I mean, as you alluded to before, the last time we had a lot of snow like this in New Orleans was 1895. So
Wow.
it's
Come
been a
on.
long time. And nobody alive today has ever seen this, and nobody alive today will probably, I mean, again, knock on wood, who knows climate change, but I suspect we'll never see it again in our lifetime. So it was very special.
Just one last thing here, like please stay home, because I just am thinking about, here in Ohio, as soon as we start getting a little bit of snow, we've got, trains of trucks that go out and start plowing and throwing salt on this. And even then, like last night, we were coming back and there was another, usually the wrecks aren't terrible, but people sliding off the road or something like that. And that's in Ohio, where we're supposed to be familiar with this. Please, all the people down in New Orleans in the South, like stay. You don't even have any snow plows in New Orleans, so I can't imagine how crazy the roads are there. Please stay home. Don't drive.
We got alerts on our iPhones on Tuesday and even on Wednesday saying like, stay home, like unless you do not need to be out there, because they had a record number of wrecks because like no one has snow tires, the roads we don't have salt for the roads, we don't have plows. They actually had to bring in plows from Indiana to New Orleans to clear some of the major things, because we don't have plows here. And but people are ill-equipped for it, people are not experienced with it, and plus the police officers were having difficulty getting to the wreck, so they said like just stay home. As I'm typing this, as we're talking on Friday morning, it's starting, the major thoroughfares are starting to melt. They're okay. The side streets are not. Again, we're gonna by Sunday, I think we're gonna be in the 60s, so this is gonna all be melted and gone very, very soon. But it was crazy.
Well, I'm glad you had some time to enjoy it. That's great.
Yes.
And
Yes,
stay
it was
safe,
great.
New Orleanians and all the other people in the South. Okay, well, I called that the Where You At segment because I just still cannot fathom that those pictures are from New Orleans. But you did have another related Where You At story today.
Sure.
AirTags prevent so much car crime that Colorado police are giving them away. I feel like we've had a story similar to this. I don't know if it was in Colorado, Jeff, but
it was in DC last time. Yeah.
Oh, DC. Okay, that's right. Some federal, some law enforcement agencies have kind of, gotten smart to this idea. Well, like, wait a minute, if individual citizens are tracking stolen cars or stolen property, and maybe we can call Apple, like they're not that expensive, and that can help us track things as well. So I'm glad to see this story today.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the police really encouraging this. And the one thing that made this Colorado story a little different than the ones that we've seen before, because like you said, we have seen stories like this in the past, is that, and you're showing it on your screen right now, in addition to giving away AirTags, they're also giving away stickers to put in your car, much like, you might have someone have like a sticker on their house saying this house is protected by a security system, or sometimes you see that on a car. They're actually saying, this car is tracked, which is interesting because I guess the idea is, the thief that's looking to break into a car, if they see that the car has a tracker, which of course they could probably find an AirTag if they look around for it, depending upon where it's located. But I guess there's a deterrent effect. The idea is that if they're thinking about stealing the car. So I just thought that was really interesting, is not only to give out the AirTags, but the stickers as well. And, you wonder, is it better or is it worse? I mean, who knows what deters criminals? You're trying to deter something that's a little irrational anyway. But maybe it would work. And it was really interesting.
because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like at some point you could just, save the money, not give an AirTag, but give a sticker, which I feel like is less expensive. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even haven't even thought about that before. Like, I may not put an AirTag in my car. I think I do, but I might put a sticker on there because I feel like in my mind, if you've got 10 cars, if you were a thief, I'm not a car thief, but if you were, I would think if you've got 10 cars and 8 of them have an AirTag or they even have a sticker, you're going to pass those up and go to the other 2 that maybe don't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the deterrent effect is the way that I kind of
Of
think
course,
about
it's
it on there.
perhaps more than that because the police department, they're not going to, from their standpoint, it doesn't do them any good if car A is not stolen, but car B is. They want to reduce the
True,
total amount of
true.
crime. So I guess the hope
Absolutely.
is that if the thieves see it and if the thieves see this news story, then maybe they just won't steal a car in the first place because they'll think the chance of them being tracked is just too high.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. And
who
it
knows?
works. Yeah. You also linked, I'll make sure you put your link in here today. I mean, the fact that on Amazon, you can still get a 4-pack of AirTags for $69.99. I mean, the list price is at least $100. I've sometimes seen them a little
Yeah.
bit more, but that's still the best price that I have seen. And I think I'm on my third pack, 4-pack of AirTags,
Hmm.
Jeff, because I just keep seeing this price, and it's like I keep finding more and more things to put AirTags in. So
I
I'm glad that you mentioned like they're still on sale.
The reason I actually linked to it, and I should have said this in my post, is last year was, I think, the first time I had ever seen a 4-pack for just under $70. And I
Yeah,
was like, this is an all-time low
right.
price. But since then, they haven't stayed there consistently because they have gone a little bit higher into the 70s and maybe $80 range. Amazon's always had them discounted from the $100, but they have stayed at this $69.99 price for a long enough time now that, first of
Really?
all, I wonder if this is becoming the new normal. This is what, at least for Amazon, I mean, go to an Apple store, it's still going to be $100, but
I
at
know.
least
I
on
was just
Amazon,
looking up the
you
Apple
can get
Store.
them
Yeah.
for this much. And second of all, we've heard these rumors that a next generation of an AirTag is going to be released perhaps sometime this calendar year. And so I do wonder if
Oh,
maybe,
yeah,
Apple
yeah.
is giving a discount to people to really sell them. Now, of course, then that begs the question of, do you want to buy technology if it's going to be replaced by something even better? But in
Hmm.
this case, the rumors, and again, these are just rumors, but the rumors that we hear is that the next generation of AirTags, maybe they'll have better battery life, who knows? But, maybe they'll also be a little bit more precise in terms of finding them, which I guess is
Right,
nice, depending
right.
if you're trying to find a lost item in your house, you want to be as precise as possible. But, for the general task of, where is my car, for example, or where is my camera case, or where
Yeah,
is my suitcase? I think
right.
that my guess is, without really knowing for sure what the next AirTag will have, I think this one's going to probably do the job for a while. So I
Oh,
would
yeah.
not
Yeah.
hesitate to purchase an AirTag right now. In fact, I did a review. I believe we talked about it just a couple weeks ago of this device that allows you to put an AirTag in with a regular AA battery, and
Yep.
it keeps it forever. I have no hesitation in purchasing them myself, recommending that people purchase them. Not that the next AirTag, I'm sure, will be better somehow, but my guess is it's not going to be so revolutionarily different that you're going to be regretting the purchase. So that was the main reason I linked to it. Is it's sort of interesting. Why is it at this low price? Is it going to be at this low price forever? What does that mean for the future?
I like still today, to this day, that when they design these AirTags, that the replacement battery is so easy to get. In fact, anytime that I order a 4-pack, I will go into, usually I get the Amazon Basics, CR2032 pack of
Exactly.
batteries,
Hmm.
which is like an 8-pack or something like that. And they're fairly inexpensive. And I think since I've had AirTags, I could probably remember maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe that first batch that I had, that I've either gotten a little notice on my phone. It's like, hey, this AirTag needs to be replaced. And so to your point, I think that kind of extends the life of that. And you're right. It's just like, I still many people use an iPhone from several years ago or an iPad from several years ago, and it still does the job just fine, even though
Hmm.
maybe you want the latest and newest, the greatest. But I think to your point, like even the older one, this current one is still worthwhile to have. It's not like they're going to go out of stock. By the way, I did look it up on the Apple Store. They are selling the 4-pack for the full price of $99. Although, if you go through the Apple Store, you do get free engraving. Although
Yeah.
I feel like at this point you're paying $30 for the engraving if you go through the Apple Store, but the Amazon store doesn't offer the engraving if you get it
Yeah.
from
When I bought
Amazon.
original AirTags, I did do the engraving through the Apple Store, and I had them like little noter on it. I even called like one of them. I had the number 1, the number 2, and I thought that would be
Wow,
useful to like
nice.
tell them apart. But I've actually
Yeah,
found an experience that you really don't need it because your iPhone can tell you which one it is, and like if you're going to
exactly.
sort of hide it in something. So there's nothing wrong with engraving. It's nice that Apple does it for free. But although it was something I did in the very beginning, my current thinking of it is it really doesn't matter. I think it's better to
Yeah.
save for me personally, I think it's better to save the money by buying from Amazon. But to each their own. If you want the engraving, you got to go to Apple and pay a tiny bit more.
I kept thinking about that just quickly to your point. Like I don't think that I've missed it. I've actually moved my AirTags in different locations. Like when we all went to Europe,
Sure.
there was one AirTag I had in like my briefcase, and I put it in my daughter's suitcase or something like that. And all I did is I just went into the Find My app on my phone, and I just renamed it inside there.
Exactly.
And it worked out just fine on that. So
Me
that
too.
Find My integration, that app has really, I think, done a great job of not just being able to track people, but the items that you have in there. Anyway, just real good stuff. It was easy to do.
Great app. Yeah.
Let's talk about something that we've already talked about several times is the upcoming anticipated 18.3, iOS 18.3. And there's another bump update for the Mac OS, and I assume we'll see this for iPad and the Apple Watch as well. This is a good story from Cult of Mac, Ed Hardy, going through what we can expect in 18.3. You had 2 other articles too, which I thought were just really great, that kind of broke down what we can be expecting, possibly even maybe next week. They're thinking maybe even the last week in January it could be released.
Sure. I mean, and just to start there, Apple releases beta versions so that developers can get ready for it. And then when they're at the very end, the release was called the final candidate, which is usually about a week before release. And that was released this week. And in fact, I saw another story by John Gruber on Daring Fireball. He just went out and said it. He's like, they're coming out next week. I don't know if that's based on inside information or speculation, but I think it's very, suffice it to say, there is a very, very good chance that when you and I are talking a week from now, iOS 18.3 will have been released. Unlike some of the prior 18.1 and 18.2 that actually had some pretty significant new features, unless Apple has a surprise that they haven't, let anybody know about yet, it looks like 18.3 is not going to be a major update. This post that you're showing right now from Gadget Hacks does the best job I've seen of going through the new features. But as you see when you go through it, I mean, bug fixes is the big one. A lot of the changes have to do with Apple Intelligence, but even then, they're not major changes. They're tweaking the visual intelligence and making it a little bit better. You and I talked in the past about notification summaries that organizations like the BBC have been so upset about it, and Apple's going to tweak it so that instead of one thing they're going to do is when they have a summary of a headline, it'll be, or anything, any summaries, they'll be in italics on your home screen instead of regular text.
Oh, I see that.
And so the idea is that when you see the italics, it gives you a little bit more of a sense of, it's not the app telling me these words. This is the AI summary telling me these words. So if the words seem wrong, because we all know that AI makes mistakes, that's why. So there's but I would just call these minor around the edges tweaks because of the bug fixes. I think it will make sense to do the update when it comes out next week. Of course, we all, recommend updates all the time. But, this is not going to be some new one. Oh, I can't wait for 18.3 because it's going to give me new features.
Right. And typically there's some kind of security updates or something like that that are important that come into that. And that's one of the other reasons that we say it's worthwhile. This one I laughed at when I saw this headline. Because frankly, I didn't even know it was something that was left out, but I'm glad that it's back. The equal sign now repeats the last operation in Calculator. Apparently, when iOS 18 first came out, the new calculator, he goes, as impressive as it was, left out the feature that we had before, being able to hit the equal sign to perform the last mathematical operation again. Now it's back. It's going to be back at 18.3. Thank goodness. I was so worried about that.
I had forgotten.
I didn't even know.
I had forgotten that Apple redesigned the calculator when 18.3 came out, and it was just last night because I don't use the iPhone's calculator. I use another app called PCalc, which I've been using for forever. And which has got all sorts of nice features to it. But my wife uses the built-in calculator, and I literally just last night was doing some work, and I heard her remark behind me, "Hey, wait a minute! They changed the calculator app," and I had forgotten about that. So, but along with the new design, apparently.
Apple,
they changed the equal sign, so I guess that's good. It's coming back. So anyway, 18.3 coming next week.
Well, most important, the last story is we're already starting to look at 18.4, and of course,
Yeah.
as I said, most importantly, there's going to be some new emojis coming
Yeah.
out. I love reporting on these because I'm like, really? I didn't know that face with bags under eyes was an emoji that people were actually screaming for, but there's now going to be a harp and a radish. So hey, we're doing good.
I suspect that I will use that face. I mean, if you look at that one,
I
it's very
know.
funny.
I know.
You can imagine the sort of conversations in which you will send that as a response. So I actually think I will use that one. You know, the big thing, I mean, a new emoji is always sort of fun and exciting to think about, but the most significant thing for me is, you know, you and I have talked about this years, you know, the many years I've been doing this podcast now, you know,
Right.
whenever Apple has a new update, you know, there's like two big steps. Step one is they release the new update in like the fall, September, October. And then
Right.
step two is either the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, or in this case, the 0.4 update. Somewhere along the way, Apple adds the new emoji, and it's everybody knows why they do this. You know, many people will not update their phone for normal reasons, but they will to get the new emoji. And so I always feel like when Apple releases the emoji, it's their way of saying, you know what? We think that this new major update
It's
is now ready for you. And so it's
really
interesting
timed.
here that, you know, if we get 18.3, like you say, in the last week of January, if 18.4 is going to come in what, February or March or something like that,
Right.
that's interesting because 18's been out since what, like last September. And so it's taken this
Correct.
long for Apple to sort of unofficially give it that thumbs up. We're ready for you now. If you haven't updated yet, come along and do it. So,
Right.
so that's
Right.
what I think is interesting.
And I think it's good because we talk about the fact that there are security updates typically in there, you know, and if people just either ignore the fact that the iPhone is telling them they need to update or they just don't want to take the time, if you've got new emojis on the board, that might push you over. Right?
Yeah.
It's like do it then. Another article you linked to from Adam Davidson at How to Geek, 10 iPhone tips that can save you time. Another good list. I feel like I was comfortable knowing most all of these. There may have been like one or two. Typically, what I find in these lists these days, Jeff, just like we've talked about, it's like, oh yeah, it's good to remind myself of these, even if I don't use it all the time.
You've a nail on the head. I completely agree, Brett. When I look at
Yeah.
lists like this, you know, my hope is it's nothing you don't know. And especially this list of tips is sort of high level. I mean, it's things like
Yes.
adding things to the control center. He's not telling you to add any specific thing to the control center, just reminding you that
Just
the control
reminding,
center is something you have easy access to. And especially
Right.
with iOS 18, you can now customize it and, you know, add whatever, so many different things to it that it's a good
Pages to
reminder
it. Right.
that you
Right.
can, you know, customize it and then add the things that matter the most to you. And likewise, one of the other high level tips is that, you know, for some complex tasks, it's actually easier to ask SIRI, I will not say the name, as opposed to doing it. And, you know, the perfect example for me is, you know, every night I set an alarm for the next morning on my iPhone, and the time that I want my alarm to go off varies a little bit from day to day. And so instead of having the same time every day, I will set it. And, you know, you can set the alarm by, you know, going into the clock app, whichever one it is, and doing it. I actually have
Sure.
something in my control center to jump there. But the fastest way to set an alarm
That's a
is
good
just to
point.
say, hey, you know who, wake me up at 6 a.m. And that does it quickly. And so there are so many things that, I mean, not that it takes that many taps to do it, but it's the easiest way to do it. And, you know, we joke about you know who, because it's not perfect
Sally.
and it makes mistakes. But one thing that Sally pretty much always gets right for me is setting an alarm. I don't think I've ever had that not work. And so that's a core function. It's a dependable function.
That's a good
So
point.
anyway, this is a good list of, you know, just reminders of the different categories of things. He also mentions, you know, using shortcuts and stuff like that. And, you know, each one of these things that you do, you know, maybe it only takes you, you know, 1 second in terms of 5 seconds. But that's not really the point. It's not the 4 seconds you gain. It's just sort of
Yeah.
the easy of us and the idea that when you have something that's more responsive, it's just better. It just makes you happier. So that's why I really thought this was a good post.
I use Sally so much, so easy to create timers. You were talking about the alarm, but I
Another
use
perfect
that,
example.
you know, all the time for setting timers, which I just feel like I'm so underusing the capabilities when I do that. But it's so easy to, because otherwise I would have to open, you know, unlock the phone. I go in the control panel just like you. I've got a button that I would jump to. whatever that is, that clock, there's like 4 different things, right? You got a stopwatch, you got a timer, and you got your alarm, like all of those items there. But it's like, I don't want to dig through it all. I just ask, say it out loud, and that's good. And the last one here that I thought was just, again, a good reminder, even though I use it almost every day, is this creating keyboard shortcuts. Like this is built in to here, it's down here, or text replacements. I'm sorry, I call them keyboard shortcuts, but it's text replacement, or it's in the keyboard setting in an iPhone or an iPad where you can do text replacements. And so I think I have things, even if I want to write like the name of a court, I don't want to write United States District Court of something, whatever. I just have like a little text replacement that I will do in there. I use Text Expander a lot on my Mac and my Windows machine. And there is a Text Expander app that I can still use on my iPhone and my iPad, but I just love doing that. And you can just copy and paste a lot of times and do that within the text replacement setting. To me, that was a good reminder, even though it's something that I do use every day. It's just now I need to be aware of it. Like, hey, if I type this over and over, or if I usually type something and spell it incorrectly, I can just go into the text replacements and create one, which is good.
Yep, exactly.
We've talked several times about the Vitals app, and when that was coming up, this is in watchOS 11, or this is a story from Adam Engst talking about this. But I just got to tell you, as much as we've talked about the Vitals, and I know how vital the Vitals app can be and why Apple is going this way, but I got to tell you, over all of the months that we've had it, Jeff, I'm still a little confused about it, like what it is, other than just kind of generally tracking what I'm doing. But I thought this was a good story from Adam Engst, that he was explaining how he kind of even didn't pay attention to it until he noticed that he had several spikes, right? I think the story was he had a couple of spikes in the Vital app that just indicated to him like, hey, something's not exactly right. Turns out he had COVID on this. So it was just a good way for him to kind of track some of the things that were going on, like leading up to the point that, like, hey, you may not be feeling well, and here's the reason why.
This article, serendipitously, we came at the right time for me, because literally just yesterday I had been looking at the health app on my iPhone, not for any particular reason. I was just sort of looking at it, and the first tab is the summary, and you have different things in there, like your weight and your heart rate. I mean, whatever you want to put in there, if you sleep.
Right.
But I had Vitals in there, and so it was literally just yesterday. I was like, oh, I haven't looked at this in a while, and so I was looking at Vitals, and it was telling me things like things are typical, and here. But I just thought it was like, well, this is an interesting idea of. It's sort of a big picture overall check on what the phone and the watch think about what you're doing. And so, and it was just occurring to me that, this makes good sense. And then, of course, I saw this article from Adam Engst, in which, as you just described, it actually turned out that it was very accurate for him in predicting things. We've talked about this in the past, that, I know that the people that work on health issues at Apple, especially the ones that work on the Apple Watch, they really believe that they have the potential, especially with AI and stuff nowadays, to extrapolate all sorts of information from the data that is sensed from you. And, in theory, in the future, wouldn't it be great if you really could predict things like, colds or even more serious things with a lot of accuracy in advance? And they really do think that we're getting there. We're not quite there yet, but I like the idea that Apple has put their flag in the sand and said, this is something that we think is going to be a bigger deal in the future. So we're going to have this Vitals feature now. And then in the future, especially as things like the Apple Watch have more sensors and stuff like that, it's only going to get better. And, it's a little bit of a sleeper right now, but my guess is that 5 years from now, at some point of time in the future, this is going to, maybe certainly 10 years from now, this is, this could be transformative. This could be the sort of thing that everybody is talking about. Oh, well, of course, you're monitoring your health and you're getting early warnings from the Apple Vitals app. And that will be because of all the new sensors that it has and the watch and everything else. So, it can do some things right now. I haven't particularly found it, making a big difference for me today, but I feel like this is setting the stage for the future, and it makes a lot of sense.
Totally agree. And I'm glad you put it that way. I remember when it first came out, I would just like, oh, this is new. I'm going to go and check it out. And it didn't really tell me a lot in those first few days. And I think he mentions it in here. I've seen some other, stories about this, that it does have to track all of these capacities over a period of time before it can give you some kind of an accurate like baseline. If that makes sense on there?
Correct. And you have to
Adam
wear it when
says
you
here,
sleep too,
yeah,
because it gets a lot of its
exactly.
measurements.
That's the next
So
thing.
it's important to wear your Apple Watch while you sleep for it
And
to
not
collect
everybody
data.
does that either. So I love the way he talked to it. This Vitals app. It tracks your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your wrist temperature, your blood oxygen, and your sleep duration. And so it's all of those measurements together that I think is contribute, because you can look at all of those measurements individually, to your point of like in the health app, right, Jeff? But the Vitals app, I think, is what it's doing, is sort of aggregating all of that information together to just see if there's any kind of an outlier. Okay, good. So now I feel like I have a little bit of a better grasp on that. And thanks to Adam, for writing about this, because he even shows a little couple of screenshots here where it literally showed some outliers that everything else was in the blue, looks like it was normal, but all of a sudden there's like one couple of peaks in here. And it actually says there was one outlier on your heart rate, 3 outliers on your respiratory rate, and 3 on your wrist temperature. Okay, this has given me a little bit of a better idea of what the Vitals app can do, and I'm just glad that you linked to that. And like you said, I think, number one, to my point, it takes some time for it to gather these measurements to give you any kind of a big picture. And then I think even on a bigger level, to your point, Jeff, it's just going to take some time for everybody. And really, frankly, as Apple continues to aggregate some of these measurements, that we might be able to see a little bit more of a benefit from a lot of that. Let's go from sleeping in your bed, hopefully not sleeping in your car, but CarPlay continues to be a little bit of a sleeper. Everybody knows that listens to this, Jeff, that both of us are pretty big fans of CarPlay. And I remember us getting very excited several months ago that Apple was going to introduce some big updates to CarPlay in 2024. And we kept waiting and waiting and waiting. Now it's 2025. No big updates yet. Yet. We're hoping to. But you actually had another link here from Mac Rumors that they're still waiting on it. They took down the language of 2024 from the Apple website, but we still haven't seen anything. What's the holdup on this?
So it was a while ago now that Apple had, first of all, Apple previewed the next generation of CarPlay. They're not calling it CarPlay 2. That's what I call it. They just say the next generation. Yeah. And, the hallmark feature was that in addition to having the regular CarPlay screen that we're all familiar with, although it can be different sizes or in some ways different shapes, that there would be like an additional screen that would go across your entire car and would display all sorts of additional information that the current generation of CarPlay cannot display. Everything from how fast you're driving to information about your car. It would literally be the next generation. Clearly, Apple can't do this on their own. It has to be working with car manufacturers to make this work. And so, but Apple had announced, and had even put on their website that by the end of 2024, this was going to be available. And so as we got closer to the end of 2024, especially once we were in the month of December, when Apple doesn't release major updates anymore, for the most part, it became sort of a running joke of, well, I guess we got 3 weeks left for Apple to do this. And we knew that by that point, it wasn't going to happen. But the funny thing was that 2024 ended and Apple still had not changed this language on its website. Up until a few days ago, their website still said coming in late 2024, which is, very surprising that it took so long. But they finally, I think just yesterday or the day before, they finally removed that sentence saying, end of 2024. But at the same time, Apple did have someone from their press relations department reach out to a couple of websites, such as the one that you were showing on Mac Rumors, where they're saying, yes, the next generation of CarPlay is still coming. We're working with, I think they use the word several car manufacturers, and I guess several could be as few as 2, could be more than that. And so, eventually we will have cars with the next generation. It takes a long time. A lot of car manufacturers don't make major changes to their cars except for once every 5 years or something. So it's going to take a long time before we get there. But it's good to know that even though Apple had been planning on making their own car and then apparently abandoned those efforts, according to the rumors, pretty strong rumors, it's nice to know that Apple is still working with car manufacturers. There still will be a day that this next generation of CarPlay will be available. Obviously, it's going to only be on a few cars at first, maybe only a few high-end cars that might be too expensive for most of us to buy. But at least it's nice to know that it's still coming. But again, the comical part was that it took Apple so long to remove that language from its website.
I have no inside information on this, Jeff, but my anger is towards the car manufacturers here. And I understand why, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's Apple, but I feel like Apple would love to do something like this. But if I were a car manufacturer and one of the most important components of a car, at least from the driver's attention and providing all the information, is the dashboard that's in front. And number one, I feel like car manufacturers are, again, understandably, I understand why they don't want to give up having control over all of that. Because frankly, if I had that option, I would never look at a car interface. I really do not enjoy car interfaces. I have never found one that I have enjoyed more than I enjoy using CarPlay. So as soon as I get in a car, I would just put on CarPlay. So car manufacturers, I'm sure, do not want to hear that. And then the second thing, I heard this the other day from someone. If CarPlay takes over, then it's probably the Apple phone in CarPlay that is gathering information. I mean, they can record a lot of this, right? Well, the car manufacturers, again, I'm assuming, understandably so, probably don't want to give up access to that information as well. So I don't know. Again, I have no inside information, but I can only imagine there have been some heated discussions back and forth that Apple says, this is what we want to do. This is the feedback we get from our customers. And the car manufacturers like, we don't want to give up that kind of control and power. I could be off base on this, but no, I'm just like,
I agree 100%.
Because I want every car to just be a shell for my CarPlay. So when I jump in, because I want to be able to set all of the settings, I want to have all my music, I want to have everything the same, no matter what car that I jump into. But if I was a car manufacturer, I wouldn't want that probably.
Yeah,
interesting stuff. Yeah. Okay, let's go to something that I know is a little more near and dear to your heart, is home automation. We've talked about the fact that, there's different products out there. There is Apple Home, and yet again, we're going to bring up Matter and Thread. I was thrilled to see this story, though, because I feel like talking about dragging feet. When are we going to see something useful come out of this? Because I just want everything to work with my Apple iPhone. And I was glad to see The Verge actually sat down with 3 people from these different groups that it sounds like it's kind of promising that they're still working together.
Yeah. So the idea is you want to have your devices be able to communicate with each other, especially in your home, because you want to be able to turn off everything from lights to appliances to get information about the temperature and everything else, cameras. And so you want everything to be able to talk to each other. And so Apple initially tried to do that on its own with HomeKit. And then, of course, Google had its own proprietary system and Amazon had its proprietary system. Right. And it became so frustrating that, do you buy a product that works for Apple? Do you buy a product that works for Amazon? Is it going to cost more if it works with HomeKit? And so a number of years ago, the industry consortium got together and said, we need to have a new protocol, and it's now called Matter. In the very beginning, it was called, I think, CHIP or something like that, CHIP, okay. But it's now called Matter. And the surprising thing is that just about everybody in the industry is on board. These fierce competitors have all come together for this. You're showing right now some of the logos. I mean, it's basically everybody in this space. So this is so impressive. And yet, as promising as it was when the Matter standard was announced years ago now, it's still, not quite there yet. All new Apple devices, and Apple's been sort of at the forefront of this, do support the Matter standard and something I'll talk about in a second called Thread, but it's still, it's still not there that you can just go in any, Home Depot or, on Amazon, and you can't just sort of buy things with abandon and just assume that it's going to all work with each other. So the Matter protocol is one aspect of this. Another aspect of it is, what technology do they use to talk to each other? And, historically, the home or the office has had Wi-Fi, which allows you to have internet everywhere. But Wi-Fi sort of relies upon having, a working, internet system, not just within your home, but also outside of your home. The Thread stand, and then of course there was Bluetooth. Bluetooth was good for very short range communications, but you basically had to be in the same room or close to that. And so this technology called Thread allows, it sort of has the range of Bluetooth or maybe a little bit more, but what makes Thread different is that you can have this mesh. So if one device can talk to a second one, and that one can talk to a third one, and that one can talk to a fourth one, and you have these Thread border devices that are like in a fixed place, like your Apple TV or a HomePod that never really move, and they could sort of act as these traffic cops. You could put together this little mesh network of things communicating each other, and Thread is very good because it's very low power and stuff like that. And, Matter works with Thread, Matter works with Wi-Fi, Matter works with other things, Bluetooth. And so putting all this together and having it all come together, this is very complicated stuff. networking's complicated, this is complicated.
Right.
And so, years ago, I thought maybe, hey, in 2023, this will all come together. It didn't happen. In 2024, this will all come together. It was a little further along, but no. And so that brings us to this interview where, as you said, the folks at The Verge have sat down with the person that's in charge of the Wi-Fi allowance, which is a Wi-Fi alliance, which is, they always come up with the new versions of Wi-Fi. What are we on now? Wi-Fi 7, I guess it is now.
Something like that.
My Wi-Fi routers, I think, support Wi-Fi 5 or, all the different numbers. And so they have the different versions of Wi-Fi. They had somebody from the Thread organization, and then they had somebody from the Matter organization. And in fact, the person that is in charge of Thread actually works at Apple. He also
I was very surprised to read that.
Yeah,
That's
he works.
amazing.
He's head of this industry organization, but he also works at Apple. So they all got together in this interview to sort of talk about how they're working together, and just the simple, just hearing them all talk to each other is like, this is exactly what we want. We want all of these things to be taught, literally the items talking to each other, but including the people. But they had a lot of promise. I mean, they said, we think that we're going to make great strides, not just in years, but like in months this calendar year. And they got the reporter at the Verge was very technical, and some of it was a little bit over my head. But the big picture of it was, it's good to see that more stuff's coming along. The next version of, I think it's Matter or maybe Thread. One of the two of them is going to come out, and it's going to hopefully solve a lot of the problems. It's Thread version 1.4 is supposed to be coming. 1.4. So, my takeaway from all of this is people haven't given up on this. It's still moving forward.
That's good.
We're getting closer and closer to the day where everything will just work together in your home or even in your office or wherever it is. And I'm glad that they're still making progress in this, because this is what we want. You want to be able to just use your iPhone, or if you're an Android user, use your Android phone, whatever. You just want to use your phone, control the things, get the information, and not have to worry about it. I want other people that are smarter than me to make it all work behind the scenes. I just want to use it.
And that's it. I don't want to take the time to learn so much information about, I just want it to work. But okay, I was thrilled to see this, but I feel like at this point I'm like, okay, this is all good that you're talking together, but let's see some action. And until then, I'm just going to kind of put it off to the side. But I'm glad that they're working. I'm glad that there's something that could be going on there. So anyway, good article. Thanks for linking to that. And okay, we still have hope.
One more thing. I mean, like right now in my current home, because I've got a bunch of smart home stuff, a lot of it works together. But like, I have a Nest smoke detector, which is a proprietary thing that can't talk to HomeKit or any of my other devices. Most of my cameras are working with HomeKit, but I've got the one camera that I have from Eufy on my doorbell that it just doesn't happen to be HomeKit compatible. So I got to use the Eufy app for it. Even within my home, and I've tried to keep things on HomeKit as much as possible. I still have all these things that can't talk to each other. So again, the hope is that one day we will be where everything can talk to each other. So, okay.
It just might take a little time. We're too impatient, Jeff. I want it to happen. Last thing, the video, so cool.
Oh.
Surely most people have heard of the band OK Go. Not necessarily because they're like the greatest musicians ever, although I think their songs are excellent, but they have made such a name for themselves over many years now. Everybody might remember a quirky video from this quartet where they were using multiple treadmills and they were
That's the one I was thinking of too.
Yeah. Exactly. Me too, because it was so amazing. And then since then, that not only are they known for some really good music, but their videos are just absolutely not to be missed. I was so mesmerized this morning when I was watching this latest music video. Not just because, first of all, I can't even wrap my head around how in the world that they used 64 iPhones with videos to do what they did, which was amazing. But at the end, in fact, your picture here that you posted from YouTube, I was laughing so hard at all of the spaghetti wires. Like, they literally had all of these iPhones plugged in and charging and all of those bricks and everything. And I just thought that was so good. So thank you for linking to this morning. What a fun video.
when I think of OK Go videos, of course, the famous one on the treadmills, they had one years ago that was this, I think it's called like a Rube Goldberg type of device where like this
Yeah,
causes
that was
this
a good one
causes this
too.
causes this. And by the time you get 12, 15, 20 down the road, if it doesn't all work perfectly, the whole thing doesn't work. So to have a music video where everything worked in succession was amazing. They had one years ago that was like different
Incredible.
colors of paint and stuff like that.
Yes, I remember that
You
one
could just
too.
you could sit down for hours and just watch the great OK Go videos of all time. And every one of them is, like you say, often a good song. But what is really amazing is like, how did they make this video?
How?
And this one is
How?
the same way. It would never have occurred to me to even try to do what they've done here. And the way that they've got these different phones that are synchronized and
Incredible.
playing things together. And it was filmed with an iPhone. Tim Cook, even I didn't link to it, but I noticed that he somewhere on one of the social media platforms, he had a link to it
Really?
earlier this week
Oh,
because
no
this was just so
kidding.
impressive. It is just, sit down, give yourself a few minutes, watch this video. It is just so, so fun. And
But
once again, who knows what they'll come out with in 2025? Because
it's
they're
just
they're
insane.
already thinking about the next one, and
Oh, sure.
just unbelievable, unbelievable.
I mean, for me, I look at something like this and I'm like, okay, how did they do that? Like, this is a phone, like we've all played with videos, and I mean, I've only watched it like a couple of times and I'm still just dumbfounded. It's amazing because it's the same video, but then it's parts of the video. Like, I don't know. But at the end, if you watch it all the way to the end, at least a whole minute here at the end is all of the people that, that helped out on it.
Isn't that amazing? Yes.
It's not just the four members of the band. I mean, there's got to be 300 people here that like worked on this, which, that tells you like the scale of what this is. But man, good job, guys. I mean, just what an awesome video on that. And thanks for linking to that today too, Jeff. That was fun.
Great stuff.
In the know.
In the know.
Because we talked about the Vitals app, I wanted to address something really quick. Now, unfortunately, this is only going to be a tip available for those of us that have an Apple Watch Ultra. Because what I'm going to talk about, I have to scroll all the way down here for the right face. Here it is, the Modular Ultra. So all Apple Watches, I believe, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, you can have modular watch faces. There's the modular watch face, modular compact, modular duo. But if you have an Apple Watch Ultra, there is also a modular Ultra. Now, remember, we talked about this before when you were exchanging multiple Apple Watches and you had an Ultra. And one of the things, obviously we talked so much about the battery life on it, but another one is this modular Ultra watch face. When this came out and I had my Ultra, I have not moved away from this watch face. I mean, I like to flip back and forth sometimes to some of the other ones, like the Snoopy one we talked about, but I will always leave the Modular Ultra, mainly because there was the ability to put so much information on this Modular Ultra. You can put 7 complications. It's like 1, 2, 3 at the top, 1, 2, 3 at the bottom, and then you've got a big one in the middle underneath the time. But not too long after that, they also offer the ability to put, I call it a complication still, around the outer bezel. Now, when this first came out, there was only a couple of ones that were available. One was like, it could be a depth meter. Now, I don't go snorkeling very often, if at all. So it's like the depth meter to me wasn't that big of a deal. It was kind of funny when I was in an airplane because, it was like off the scale, but it was like, it didn't really do anything for me. There was another one that you could do where it would like count the seconds around the watch face. And I'm like, okay, that's fun, but it doesn't really help me anything. Well, after the Vitals app came out, they offered another bezel complication, and this one is called the training bezel. And I'm trying to figure this out, and it's one that I keep on now because it's great. On the left side of the watch face, on the training bezel, you can put the Vitals, or it comes up with the Vitals. And it's just this weird thing. In fact, here I've got another picture I'm going to show you from Reddit that'll show this a little bit better. On the left side is the Vitals app, but it's just sort of like a straight line. Does that make sense? And so it'll tell you the blue is like your normal, and then if there's a spike or an outlier, it'll show you. Well, on the right side of the watch face, you have what they call training load. I don't really understand that too much, but it is tracking your training load on Apple Watch. In other words, if you do some activity, it'll tell you if you had a spike in it or, if it was normal or if you have an outlier. And mine typically just says well below if I haven't exercised in a couple of days, or it'll say above. In other words, you're above your normal median training load on it as you were on there. So I'm just saying, for me, there's so much information on the modular watch, ultra watch face, but I love it. I love the fact that I can put so much in. Sometimes I will swap them out. I typically have like the weather as one of them. My circles, for activity is another one of them. You can see on this Reddit page I'm linking to, they even have Shazam listed on there. Then they have Apple Music. I just like the fact that I can put so much information. I feel like this is the most customizable watch face that Apple has come out with, but the modular ultra is only available on the Apple Watch Ultra, obviously, which I kind of hate that because I feel like other people could deal with it and enjoy it as well. But anyway, that's just my tip. We were talking about the Vitals app before, and even though the only thing I don't like, I'll just quickly say, is even though I have the training bezel on, I can't tap on the Vitals bezel to go to the Vitals app. Does that make sense? But I typically just will swipe up on my watch face and I can get to my Vitals that way. But I kind of wish that I could tap on the Vitals bezel and go to the app, but it just is kind of showing me, just a general idea. But I feel like that's the most helpful component, like the bezel in the Apple Watch face. So any of you having the Apple Watch Ultra, make sure you go in and check out the modular Ultra watch face, and you can customize it to your heart's content.
I tried them, as you know, the Ultra 2 for almost a month last year.
Right.
And I really liked it. Although for me, I preferred the Apple Watch 10. But when I think about the things that I missed, beforehand, I would have thought, well, maybe it would be that you have this whole extra button on the left side of the Ultra. But the reality is I didn't use it that much. Maybe it would be the amazing battery life of the Ultra. And I did like it, but my Apple Watch 10 has been fine with battery life. The durability of the Ultra, not a big deal for me because I'm not like climbing mountains and stuff like that. Although this week I did have to experience the Arctic tundra. But anyway,
you were out this.
The number one thing that I missed about the Ultra was the modular Ultra watch face.
Okay.
Because it displays so much. I love all the information you can put on there. I loved having two big widgets instead of just one. I really loved that watch face. And in fact, when I did my review of the Apple Watch Series 10, a couple months ago now, I actually had like a side-by-side picture where, the screen of the Series 10 is bigger than previous generations. So there's no practical reason why you couldn't put the modular Ultra watch face
I remember you saying
on the Series 10. And in fact, I even took a screenshot on my watch on the Ultra. And then I put that screenshot on my Series 10. And yeah, if you're looking at my review, you may have actually find it on there. And it totally worked. Like you could totally put that watch face on the Series 10 and it would totally work. And yet Apple hasn't allowed that feature. And I really wish that they would. I think it was up, you missed it. But it's the number one thing that I missed about it is I love that watch face. I'm still hoping that maybe, I know Apple wants to have a unique feature for the Series 10. It's that one right there. So that is a screenshot of my Ultra, just but it's on the Series 10 and it totally works. There's enough space for it.
I see.
So I really wish that
Yeah.
Apple would allow it because I loved that watch face. And I mean, like you said, whether you put the seconds on the side or something else, that's what you want your watch to be. You want your watch to be something that you glance at it and you instantly see the information that you want. Of course, I'm talking about the time, but maybe the weather, maybe something about your mail, maybe a shortcut for something, maybe the seconds, or as you just described it, maybe, your overall health, especially as the Vitals app gets even better in the future and the intensity of your overall workouts. So I love that tip. And I love the fact that Apple has that. I wish all Apple Watches could use it. Who knows? Maybe one day that they will, but we're not there yet. So
I see on your screenshot here, you had the seconds going around. Because I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the only two options you had when this came out was that depth gauge and the seconds. I don't think that there was another one. And it's like neither of those. I don't want either of those, but I don't want to not have a bezel because I know I can have a bezel and I don't want that blank, I want to utilize every little, space of that. But I see now, I remember looking at this picture when you reviewed this because you even had the Overcast app as one of your widgets. You had weather as like the big fat widget there in the middle there, and then you had your circles in your calendar. Anyway, just really cool. And by the way, I like the reason I didn't want the seconds going around the outside is because you can see on this watch face you only have the hour and the minutes. But if I go back to my Reddit here, you can see you can even customize how the clock looks on there. So it has hours, minutes, and even the seconds. So I'm like, I don't want to be redundant. I don't want the seconds going around. You know, I guess if you're a nurse or something, that would be helpful to have. But anyway, just really good. That's my tip that I wanted to share today. Was just looking, if you have an Ultra watch, it's worth looking into the Modular Ultra watch face.
Great tip. Great tip. So my tip today, as a resident of New Orleans, I am probably the last person who should ever offer tips on cold weather. Having said that, I do have one from this week, which is this. When I was walking around outside on Tuesday, when there was beautiful snow was still falling, the temperature was, right around freezing and stuff like that. Of course, I was taking a lot of pictures. I was taking a lot of videos, and I was totally surprised. Well, a little surprised. I'll come back to that in a second. That when I got home, even though my iPhone had been fully charged, because I had been keeping my iPhone charged just in case we lost power or something like that. When I got home, I really had not been outside for that long, but I had been taking, video in 4K, all the most vigorous type of video you could take. My iPhone was basically dead. I was at like 1%. And I'm like, wow. But it reminded me that, and Apple says this on the website, as you're saying, if you are in an extreme warm, or in this case, an extreme cold situation, your iPhone battery life will go down a lot more. And I say it wasn't a complete surprise to me, because when I was walking around taking videos with my son, he actually reminded me. He said, Dad, you know that when you're taking all this video, your iPhone is going to run down. And the only reason he knew it is because last year around Mardi Gras time, we took because the kids were off of school, we took vacation time and went up to go skiing. I say to go skiing. I myself know diddly squat about skiing, but my kids learned how to ski and snowboard. They did a beautiful job. I just sat there and watched them. But I remember that when we were in New York at the time at a smaller ski hill. But I noticed that when I was outside in that really cold weather, as I was taking videos of my kids, that my iPhone battery went down really fast. And what I did do when I was on the ski slopes, and I had forgotten about when I walked around on Tuesday, was taking with me like an external battery. I've got the one that Apple used to sell that just, goes right on the back of the MagSafe one on the back. And so my tip of the week is, if you're going to be in a very cold, freezing temperatures or below, and you're going to be taking a lot of video, take an external battery with you if you can, especially if you have something very small and convenient like those MagSafe ones, because you will run through just something about the way the iPhone works. When it gets really cold, it really runs through battery. My guess is that what it's doing is it's probably, warming itself up so that it continues to operate in the cold temperatures, and it's really using battery life. I don't know technically why it is, but and I mentioned this, Brett. I mean, you're the one that lives in Ohio, for goodness sakes. Now, maybe you don't spend that much time walking outside in the freezing weather, but have you ever noticed this before, that if you spend a lot of time outside taking videos and pictures and stuff, or even just using your iPhone, that it really wears down the battery more?
I haven't noticed that, but when you were talking about this, it made me think of, there have been some times when I've been in like an extreme hot conditions, or it's like when I've gone to Texas to visit my mom, like in the summertime or something like that. And I don't notice the battery life, but I do notice, there have been some times when the phone will get very, very hot, and they'll even shut down, like at the bottom of this page here, a temperature warning will appear. And I say shut down, I don't think that it completely shuts everything down, but it'll give you a temperature warning to say like, hey, you've got to you've got to stop this. Or I would even tell you, there is a wireless charger in our Subaru car that I have, and if I put my phone there, it'll charge it, but I guess it's a very small slot that you can put that in. I don't know if it's because of it's a small area, it's a car, so there's a lot of other things going on too. But if I leave my phone in there for too long, it will start shutting down. Like, it'll give me this little warning, and it'll just say, it's going to go into this. I feel like it's some kind of a mode where it won't charge anymore. And only certain things may be available. It'll start shutting down some of the other things. I mean, obviously you can tell by the way I'm talking about it, doesn't happen very often. So I haven't really, hasn't caused me concern, but this is a little bit different than what you're talking about with the battery. I guess I just haven't noticed it, but most of the time I'm usually carrying an extra battery, especially like even when we were traveling over the holidays, taking lots and lots of video out, walking around. It wasn't like deathly cold or anything, but I could see that it just ran down because I was doing more videos than I would normally do, maybe. But I just had never thought about like some of those extreme cold temperatures, and I know you had never thought about it either, going out in New Orleans.
Well, the fact that Apple has a page on its website devoted to the topic of extreme temperatures. If your iPhone or your iPad gets either too hot or too cold, means that they absolutely recognize this and they have some suggestions. And so, again, my tip is if you're going to be in a really cold situation and, skiing or walking around when New Orleans gets 10 inches of snow or something like that are perfect examples, just keep in mind that your battery life is going to go a lot faster than you expect and you're used to. So, if I had been outside much longer, I would have had to go get my backup battery to use it. And so just something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, they do say if you use it in very cold conditions, it might temporarily shorten battery life. This is what you're talking about, and could cause your device to turn off. So I bet if you kept going, it might have shut off. But I like this. I guess this is somewhat encouraging. Battery life will return to normal when you bring your device back to higher ambient temperatures.
And that's what happened to me. Exactly.
You just got to go inside, right?
Yeah. So
it was good. Interesting. Okay, good to know. And like you said, I had no idea that this support article even existed. So now I guess I'll be watching it a little bit more. Well, hopefully enjoy what's left of the snow, Jeff, because it sounds like it'll be gone in a couple of days. And hopefully by the time we talk with you next time, I don't know. We don't want any other bad weather for you. We certainly don't want any more snow. It's certainly nothing else. But good talking with you as always, Jeff. We'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.